The Philadelphia 76ers once again find themselves with one of the best records in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA. There were only a few things to look forward to before the season began, but with the way the Sixers have started, with the way an actual NBA coach like Nick Nurse has been getting this team to play connected basketball, and with the way a young rising star guard has come out of the gates, fans are feeling the good vibes. It feels like years ago since the James Harden saga ended, but that trade happened last month, and more pieces from that trade have fit like a glove. Oh, I guess I should have mentioned the reigning NBA MVP, Joel Embiid, who came into the season with the stink of Game 7 in Boston in the playoffs last year. But so far this year, Joe looks like a whole new player. Aside from Tyrese Maxey, no one has benefited more from the new changes around this team more than Joel Embiid. With Nurse's motion-based system, Maxey's ascendance, more depth filled with long athletic wings, parts of Embiid's game that have been dormant have been unlocked. Most notably, his passing. All of Embiid's numbers when it comes to passing have jumped dramatically this year, from assists per game, assist percentage, assist usage, and assists per 36, all while keeping his turnover metrics mostly the same or a decimal point or two higher. And we're at the point in the season where it's safe to assume that this trend is here to stay. Today, we're going to talk about how and why Embiid is a better passer this year, and why he has always had this in him. To understand why Embiid has had this jump in passing, we need to look at his improvements since the 2019-20 season. He has incrementally gotten better in that department. Yes, doubles on the post are still an issue in the playoffs, but to say he hasn't gotten better in that area compared to when he first stepped on an NBA floor is just not true. In general, Embiid has gotten better at getting rid of the ball quicker when two defenders are in his area, and then the ball would ping around the perimeter for a three. His assists per game jumped from 2.8 in 2020-21 to 4.2 in both the 21-22 and the 22-23 seasons. But at the end of the day, the Harden Embiid-led Sixers under the awful coach that was Doc Rivers became predictable, and it was easy to coax Embiid into turnovers that brought back flashes of year 2 or year 3 Embiid. During the Doc Rivers era, Embiid's improvement passing the ball wasn't fully realized because of the change from Brett Brown's motion offense to a stagnant ISO-based offense under Rivers. But it did pop whenever Harden was out of the lineup. In the 15 games Embiid played without Harden in the 22-23 season, Embiid averaged 32 points per game, 9.5 rebounds per game, but more importantly, 6.2 assists per game. This season, Embiid is averaging 32 points per game, 11.3 rebounds per game, and 6.6 assists per game. And over the last 8 games he's played in, Embiid has averaged 8 assists per game. And the passing is popping in different ways under Nick Nurse, who is infinitely a more creative coach than Doc Rivers. So what are the differences? This is something I touched on over the summer, but one of the easier ways to diversify an offense for a center is to turn them into a hub of sorts. One where players can run off of that hub with DHOs that flow into a pick and roll, or holding the ball while the defense is locked in on you, and then hitting cutters. During the Brett Brown era, the Sixers were one of the preeminent dribble handoff teams, using Embiid as a hub to form a two-man game with JJ Redick or Jimmy Butler, and then everything in the offense would flow out of that. Under Doc Rivers, the Sixers went away from that. And now under Nurse, the Sixers are right back to being one of the frequent dribble handoff teams in the NBA. They are currently 3rd in dribble handoff possessions per game and are 4th in points per possession out of dribble handoffs. Those actions with Embiid handing the ball off have been a boon for the Sixers. DeAnthony Melton gets tons of space off of Embiid handoffs for threes. Tobias Harris, who has also benefited greatly under Coach Nurse, gets downhill easier, which is his bread and butter. Kelly Oubre was playing well off of that action before he got hit by a fucking car, and Nick Batum, who has been a revelation for the Sixers, can fire off his quick release 3. More importantly, the DHO has been a staple play in the two-man game of Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, who has elevated his game so much that he is seen as an equal to Embiid on this team. Big men throughout NBA history have needed a dynamic guard from the perimeter to synergize off of each other and do that two-man dance. We can look at recent examples if you don't want to look all the way back through history. Anthony Davis needed LeBron James to unlock everything to win the 2020 bubble title. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray have long been one of the best two-man games in the league, and when Murray came back from injury last year, the Nuggets were back on the title contending track. Giannis and the Bucks won a title after trading away Eric Bledsoe and getting Drew Holiday, and now Giannis has a better partner in Damian Lillard. Tyrese Maxey to me is the best partner Embiid has had offensively to run a two-man game with, and I don't even think it's close. It's scary that we're nearly 20 games into the season, yet this duo keeps showing massive strides looking like they've played together for years. JJ Redick was an elite shooter and worked well off of Embiid in the early years, but Redick was older at that point, couldn't really get to the rim, and his handle was limited. Jimmy Butler was legitimately awesome with Embiid on both sides of the court for 4 months, but Brett Brown wanted the ball in Ben Simmons' hands until it was playoff time and Brett said, fuck it, Jimmy Butler pick and roll. And even then, there was like a weird month-and-a-half stretch where Jimmy Butler just refused to shoot outside shots. Speaking of Embiid and Simmons, those two hardly ever ran two-man game together. They were good together simply because they were good players. Harden was the best partner for Embiid up to that point, because Harden would feed Joe the ball in pick and roll and could hit a step-back three, but after the ball left Harden's hands, cutting, relocating, taking catch-and-shoot threes, doing anything off the ball really was just something that Harden was not interested in doing at all. And even then, Harden's finishing around the rim declined dramatically. Maxey provides world-class speed, downhill attacking, a floater game, and flat-out elite shooting. Maxey has been one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, period. He has all the elements of elite shooting Redick provided for Embiid: movement shooting, off-the-catch shooting, shooting off the dribble in a pick and roll, while also having the downhill attack and mid-range shooting element Jimmy Butler had. And the Maxey Embiid pick and roll attack, while not the same as it was with Harden, is getting better by the game. And it has more options because Maxey can actually get to the rim and finish, shoot off the dribble, or get into his floater package. The numbers with that duo were there last year as well, whenever Harden didn't play or was off the court. This two-man game has more pop, more dynamic athleticism, and now that Embiid actually has a point guard who can shoot, dribble, and pass all at once, I know, a fucking wild concept for a basketball player. The role players on this team don't have to pick up the slack offensively for a guard who refused to shoot or even bother getting better at it, or a guard who just stood around if he wasn't getting into a step-back three. It opens up so many things for the Sixers with all of the wings and shooters that they have now. This is one of the things I've been begging for on the Sixers for years, even when this team was coached by Brett Brown. More wings who can defend, cut, and space the floor. The Sixers' past roster choices really stuck out in my head when Kelly Oubre immediately became the most athletic wing the Sixers have probably had in the Embiid era. When Oubre gets back, the Sixers now have a really deep wing and guard room of DeAnthony Melton, Jaden Springer, Pat Bev, Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, who I'm so fucking happy is back in Philly and it fills my process heart, and Danuel House rounding out the depth nicely. By the way, Nick Nurse should stop fucking playing Marcus Morris and play KJ Martin, but that's a different story. I've never seen this many two-way options before in the Embiid era. And in Nurse's system, they cut, move without the ball, and shoot, all of which has enhanced Embiid's passing. What I've really noticed is that it feels like Embiid is hitting cutters way more this season than at any point in any Embiid season ever. Numbers back up the Sixers' frequent cutting. The Sixers are currently 13th in cut frequency, and when you compare that to the rankings during the 3 seasons under Doc Rivers, yeah, these 18 games have really driven home the point that Doc Rivers was a basketball terrorist.
Terrorists win.
When you think about it, it's actually more impressive that Embiid somehow improved his passing under Doc, because in the Brett Brown era, the Sixers were also a frequent cutting team, but Embiid was nowhere close to the passer or scorer he is now, and the personnel back then did not have the dearth of wings and guards the Sixers do now. But Embiid is hitting cutters more than ever before. All of these wings and guards can shoot too, and relocate off of Embiid. Relocation seems to be more emphasized under Nick Nurse, and these guys can at least competently attack a closeout or move around Embiid when he is the hub in the foul line extended area or at the top of the key. When all of these different players are flowing off of Embiid, Maxey, and the Embiid-Maxey two-man game, it makes everyone more deadly and opens up Embiid's passing even more. Also, side note, let me just say that Nick Batum is pretty easily the best post-entry passer the Sixers have had in the Embiid era. Learn how to throw an entry pass, kids. There are obviously still warts and things that Embiid can still improve on as a passer, but it's important to note that Embiid will probably never be the instinctual passer that, say, a Jokic is. Embiid can still find himself in trouble turning the ball over when he does too much dribbling in a crowd. He still gets tunnel vision at times and misses wide open teammates, say at the top of the key or under the basket, and instead opt for a contested mid-range jumper out of isolation. He'll still make the occasional lazy pass that turns into a live ball turnover that will drive you and me absolutely fucking crazy, and of course he is going to have to translate this jump in playmaking to the playoffs, where smart defenses like the Celtics and the Heat can flummox him with a surprise double whenever Embiid puts the ball down on the floor. I think when it comes to different types of double teams, Embiid has improved as a passer, such as when a team sends a double from a different angle, or when Embiid is facing up and a team sends a second guy to his area and Embiid can see everything in front of him. It's that double team that comes with his back to the basket on the post, or as soon as he decides to put the ball on the deck, that he still has some trouble. But with the way Nick Nurse has used Embiid in all different areas of the court and in different actions, he'll certainly have more options and adjustments to use during this upcoming playoff run. And Nick Nurse can tweak stuff as Embiid continues to establish himself as a playmaker this season. The Sixers right now, not counting the debacle that was the Pelicans game yesterday, have the second best offensive rating in the NBA. And that's without factoring in that Daryl Morey now has the ammo to make a few trades or head into the summer with max cap space. It's not just Maxey's ascent that has been such a big development for the Sixers, the calculus of their season has also changed because of Embiid's passing.